I do post some, hopefully, some interesting questions that would stimulate discussion and keep that in the presence in the forefront of people's minds when they read the book. You don't have to read it as some deep philosophical. You can. I think it's there for the reading. You can simply read it as a high epic fantasy tale full of mages and ladies and lords and battles and things like that. But if you want to read a bit deeper, then I feel those themes are there.
Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I am here today with author P.L. Stuart. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. So honored, Steve, to be here. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking a second ago, and I always say this, but I'm always surprised whenever anyone says that they listen or they watch, because I don't know who's watching or listening. So
I don't understand, man. You're a big deal, man. This was really important to me. So your popularity, as I said, is growing immensely with each broadcast. So kudos to you.
Well, it's very kind of you to say, but I'm not sure about that. But like we were just talking about, I'm having fun, so I hope people enjoy. But I get to talk to awesome people like you, so it's a win-win.
Yep, feelings mutual.
So it's fun to interview someone who's interviewed people before too, because we can, it's a unique experience to interview people. It takes some getting used to, and I learn every time. So it's you learn a lot about yourself and in that same process. So it's really fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely learning too, for sure. Absolutely. To go along.
And so tell us about your book, A Drowned Kingdom. What is it about?
Okay, well, A Drowned Kingdom is book one. Oh man, that's wow. I feel special. That's on your shelf.
Oh yeah.
Is book one in the Drowned Kingdom saga. And the Drowned Kingdom saga focuses on my version of the tale of the lost realm of Atlantis. Atlantis, sorry. My version is called Atlantics. I didn't get too creative there, but so it centers around the main character, who is a flawed protagonist. Some people would say he's an antagonist. I leave that up to the reader. But I actually would agree. However, so he's a flawed protagonist, sorry, who could be an antagonist, and he is the prince of second in line to the throne of my version of Atlantis. And without giving too many spoilers, you can imagine you write something about Atlantis is probably going to sink. That's what happens. But he survives and leads the other survivors from the tragedy that sinks his kingdom across the sea to a new continent where he must establish a foothold amidst things such as warlords and mages. And he belongs to a society that consider themselves peerless as the greatest civilization in the world. It was also a society that was ruthlessly monotheistic, practicing a religion of worship of one god, and a very colonial type society where, like most colonial societies, take your society, the Incas, the British Empire, the Egyptians, etc. They feel that the best way to do things is impose their will and their religion on everyone else, and if they must slaughter and such to subjugate, then so be it, for the good of the people that they're subjugating, of course. So yeah, that's the essentially the essence of what this series is about, and Othrin's rise to power in a new continent as he copes with questioning all he believes in, facing challenges, and of course is trying to stay alive in the face of a lot of people who don't want him in that continent, want to kill him, and want to prevent him from taking over the continent, because that's his ambition, and imposing his way of life, his people's way of life, and his religion on them.
What inspired this story? When did this start to germinate in your mind on this is the story I want to write?
Oh wow, Steve, this has been germinating for years. It's taken different iterations since I was very young. I'm talking pre-high school and into adulthood. It kind of changed. Um, I think the biggest change in adulthood wasn't so much the essence of the story, but the themes that I explored.
Mm,
I definitely felt as I get older that some of the themes were important to discuss, and a lot of them are timeless and relevant. Things like patriarchy, racism, homophobia, colonialism, sexism, religious intolerance. Those are things that, unfortunately, we as a humankind are still grappling with today. And I'm not there. I'm certainly not smart enough to provide any answers. So don't go
right.
looking for answers from me. But I do post some, hopefully, some interesting questions that would stimulate discussion and keep that in the presence in the forefront of people's minds when they read the book. You don't have to read it as some deep philosophical. You can. I think it's there for the reading. You can simply read it as a high epic fantasy tale full of mages and ladies and lords and battles and things like that. But if you want to read a bit deeper, then I feel those themes are there.
And it's something that now with everything being so polarizing and everything being there's one side against another, and I think most people fit probably in the middle, and it's the vocal minorities on both sides, and no matter what side you're on, I think most people are just reasonable people. But I always wonder creators if they consider how far to go with those kind of themes, and to make it a story you can enjoy but still have a message in it, still have something you want to convey. Was there ever a time when you dialed it back, or raised it, dialed it in a little bit to get those thoughts across that you were thinking, wanted to those messages you wanted to convey to the reader?
I felt that I had to be somewhat blunt and forthright about some of the issues. At the same time, I want to weave them into the narrative effective enough so that, again, someone who is not necessarily, looking at the book per se for its themes, and more they want to, an adventure story. They want to lose themselves and immerse themselves in, a made up world for, a few hours or a few days. I think I tried to write the book that I wanted.
Mhm.
um, I don't I'd like to think it doesn't come off too heavy-handed, but at the same time, what is heavy-handed, that's up to the perception of the
It's
reader, I
true.
believe. I remember watching an interview with fantastic and well-known grimdark author, sorry, Jonathan French. He's wrote I think it's
The
the
gray,
Gray Bastards, and it's he's got just became one of the Kirkus Star, and was formerly a star at the self-published fantasy blog off. He won that in the past, so now he's a traditionally published author, very credible. I remember watching an interview with him and saying, yeah, I there's two types of people. You either want to read it for the themes, or you don't, and you just want to escape. And hopefully I he can his thing was that he could appeal to both, but he wrote for the people who are looking for the themes.
mm,
And I think that's what I did. I wrote for people who are looking for something deeper. Good friend of mine, great author that I respect so much, Bjorn Larson,
mhm.
author of children and storytellers, and upcoming Why Odin Drinks. He actually read my book and provided, honored to provided a blurb for the cover. And we were talking about the book, and he's like, it's not a phrase that he coined, but it's a phrase that I certainly hadn't heard my book referred to. He called it moral grimdark. And he says his book is moral grimdark, and there's a lot of other great books out there that are, but yeah, that's what he referred to it as. That the darkness in the stories is in the morality and the value system, and 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 the challenges that author faces to his value system, and how he's going to come out of it. So.
Mm. That sounds great, and something I didn't know about myself until I took more time to pay attention to what I pulled out of books is I'm big on themes, and I never really realized that until I kind of sat back and took a look at what my takeaway from whether it be books or movies or any form of entertainment. I try and pull themes, and I wondered how. So if you have a theme in mind, how do you add that to the story and interweave it into the narrative? What are techniques that you use to do that?
Well, I believe I have the luxury of writing a book from the first person perspective.
Mm,
So, and there's advantages and disadvantages to that. Obviously, it's narrow and limited in scope. So, and of course, your perspective is based on the reliability of the narrator. And if you believe the narrator is unreliable, and of course, no person can see everything. They see it from how they view the world. But with that, it made it very easy to access those themes because, Authren is bigoted and patriarchal and misogynist. So you hear his thoughts and you see how he interacts with people and things that he does, in that vein. And you also see when he potentially starts to think a bit differently and wonder if his beliefs are necessarily, valid or not on certain things, right? So I found that part easy to access the themes because, again, with first person, it's right in your face. So
There's no hiding from it.
no, I can't run and hide.
So was there certain things that you took into consideration writing the main character that you don't want to get too far off, the journey, the character has a journey, but was there any points where you didn't want to go too far to turn the reader off to the character too soon and still leave that character room for, I guess, redemption?
Well, it's funny. I took the zero sum approach. So start him really low. So you probably hate him or don't like him, and then work your way up from there, right? Over the course of a 7-book series. So because I strongly believe that, especially someone of that nature who
Mhm.
came from that upbringing, a very privileged upbringing. He was royal and near the upper echelon of society, and he considered his society at the upper echelon of all societies. uh, being raised that way, how would someone like that change? Would they change? How soon would they change? To what degree? Would it be incremental? Would it be, does it take, they all say that, takes usually some kind of catastrophic event to initiate, broad sweeping change, expedite change. So, in his case, yeah, I started him started at the bottom. And, from there, we'll see how far he comes in his arc towards being a different person.
Mm,
Because part of that too is exposure, age. That all those things play a part. I firmly believe there gets to be a point. I think humankind has a great capacity to evolve. That said, it also has a great capacity to entrench. And sometimes as we get older, our views really become entrenched.
mm,
So there's that window, I think, where we're more enlightened and open to, different ideas and absorbing different concepts and really looking at the world and examining it critically and objectively. I think there's a window kind of for that. And then you get to a certain age where, like everything else, you're kind of the person you are. Not that you can't keep evolving, like I said, we have a great capacity to do that. But for the most part, I think, by the time you reach a certain age, you're kind of who you are. So,
yeah.
uh, you know,
Whether that's good or bad, I guess, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
good or bad.
Yeah. And do you have, so it's a 7-book series? Do you have it all planned out? Do you know what this arc is going to be?
Yeah, exactly. My friends laugh at me because, they can think I'm crazy. I am kind of crazy, let's face it. But, I have, the entire plot of 7 books and beyond. I have 20 books planned
Oh
in my
wow.
universe. I have 7 books in this series for Authren, 2 separate prequel trilogies planned, and another 7 books that takes up where the Drowned Kingdom saga leaves off. I have all the names of the books, the titles, I know what the covers are going to be like, the plots. I have, yeah, it's all mapped out. So hopefully, God willing, I live long enough to, you know, write it all and get it all published. But it's all there. So, you know,
Wow, that's awesome. And
thank you.
especially fantasy, I wonder how authors keep track of everything. So if you have everything planned, how do you keep track of the world and the characters and interactions? Is there a method that you use to kind of keep track of where everything's going to go and who interacted with who, and not to go back on anything else you've done before? Do you have a way to track everything?
Um, DLC, not particularly. I do have some bases. Like for example, I have family trees for my characters because
Mm.
there's a lot of genealogy and lineage involved and lore. So who is whose parent and when did so and so die and when were they born and how did they interact with what's the relationship to this person or that person. And I have like kind of like a appendix and glossaries, which I include much of those in the books because I feel especially an epic fantasy on the scale of something like this, you need the reader needs to have those reference guides, a map, so they can follow the character's journey. Glossary of names. I have a glossary of places as well, so you can figure out, what is this again? Because there's a lot of different settings and places and people that are referred to in the books, and there's people that are deceased that are discussed. And I mean, as the series goes on, people will die, and
Yeah.
but they may be referred to, and then you'll the significance, you need to be able to have that. Harder to do that if you're reading it on your Kindle or something, but with the copy like you have, you can always flip back, and so. But yeah, that's how I track it. It's all most of it's in my crazy head, so it's. But yeah, obviously I do have to do a lot of going back and double checking as the series progresses to make sure I didn't contradict myself in something. But I mean, for a lot of authors, this stuff is in their head, right? Because that's the whole point of writing fantasy. It's all made up. It's in your head,
Yeah.
and But yeah, there's some verification that has to go on to make sure that you didn't contradict yourself or didn't make someone too old, or based on this person's being this person's daughter or wife or son, or etc. So yeah, there's some of that, but for the most part, it's pretty well all up here.
Hmm. Oh, that's impressive. That's a lot to that's a lot to keep track of, but it's great that you have it all planned out, and that's you kind of have the whole the whole series plan. That's great. That's what I would do, because I have to plan. So that makes me happy to hear that you have it planned out. And with character names in fantasy, how did you pick the character names?
Well, I kind of have a method, but that's kind of the secret sauce. I can tell you off camera. I trust you, but I don't really broadcast it. That said, though, as a generality, and if you do end up reading the book, and for those who do read it, the Atalanteans, author in society, they tend to have the more posh, highfalutin sounding names because that's who they are. And the Acremians, the people of the two regions in Crimea, which is the continent they go to. One region Sanavia, and one region's Eltnia, and then there's another kind of almost a subcontinent across the channel from there. That's the end of people. They have, at least the Eltnish and the Sanavians on the continent of Crimea, they have more simple names, shorter names, more to the point and blunt, right? And and again the posh bougie in your nose at Atalantes, they have those longer, more complex names. So
Posh, I like that. Uh, what is your creative process?
wow. Well, I I work shift work, so I only write when I'm awake,
Yeah.
inspired, have energy. I'm not coming off a night shift and I wake up and I don't remember my own name.
Mhm.
But even though there's times that I do and I'm extremely inspired and I'm alert, and despite irrespective of what I'm working, I can write all day long. And then there's days when I've had a great night's sleep, but I'm just not feeling it, just not inspired, particularly inspired. And I don't write on those days. I don't adhere to a specific word count. I don't, I really don't. I'm
Okay.
very loosey goosey with that stuff. But that said, I have this internal clock in my head. It's kind of like, sometimes you just know when to get up. So some people are like that. They don't need alarm. It's time to get up. And it's the same thing. I know I have a deadline. I plan to publish one book essentially roughly every year, so in a calendar year. So I know that I have a deadline to meet if I want to get it out within that calendar year. So as long as my creative process is flowing well enough that I can get that book done in a year, I'm on track. So it doesn't matter if I write, you know, 100,000 words in 3 months and only 10 in the next 3 months, as long as by the deadline I have, say it's 160,000 words, that I have 160,000 words. So
Yeah, it's really tough, because I just recently stopped working shift work. I worked shift work for a long time, and the especially the night shifts, you really brain foggy sometimes, and
yeah.
sometimes you feel better than others, but that must be tough to focus on something like writing after a night that you work.
Yeah, and again, it's all about pacing yourself, and the luxury of being a self-published author is that deadlines are self-imposed. It's up to me, right? So I don't have to worry about well, I need to get this into my editor by this day. I need to do this by this date. Well, no, it's on my timeline essentially. So Those are all self-imposed deadlines that I want that commitment to the readers to have a book every year. And I feel that hopefully people are interested enough that they read the first book. Okay, I want the second, and oh, I really want the third, and then so that the excitement and buzz in the series grows as the series progresses. So, and especially since I left the first book on somewhat of a cliffhanger, um, so I think that's something I took a chance to do. I thought it was when you're a novice indie author, man, you gotta take chances, man. You gotta roll the dice, take some risks. And I felt that for the first book of a series, it was most appropriate to do that. So yeah, so that's what I did.
Nice. And you are self-published. Did you ever consider going with with a traditional publisher, or were you just dead set on self-published?
Well, never say never, but I knew that initially I did my homework, and I started very late in life, getting ready to publish a book, and my first book was published just over a year ago. My early 50s. I'll be 53 soon. So I felt that with the very lengthy timelines of traditional publishing, you can wait 6, 7, 8, 10 years to secure an agent after querying to get an agent. Then once you get an agent, it may take years to find a publisher who wants to buy your work, and to get a book deal. And then waiting, again, traditional publishing timelines are certainly not as expedited as self-publishing. And there's a pecking order. If you're a mystery writer and you're with the same big traditional publishing house as John Grisham, even if your book comes out first, if John Grisham says, "Oh no, my book's ready," well then, oh, your book's getting pushed to the back of the line, right? So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, so you don't have those concerns in self-publishing, and your book is not going to be marketed less assertively than a bigger name. So there are a lot of creative freedom. No one's going to tell you what to write. You're going to publish essentially what you want. So you get to choose cover design, you get to choose your editor, you get to choose so much that you don't, and the royalties are somewhat higher. Obviously, there's a downside to, like anything else. There's always advantages and disadvantages to traditional versus self-publishing. But I think the self-publishing model really worked for me based on the fact that I do have my series planned out and I want to publish 20 books. And I started older. If I'm successful and I live long enough, everything goes fine. That'll take me to my 70s. So let's just say I live till I'm like 90. Well, like that's a lot of writing for an old guy. Hopefully, I have all my faculties still there that I can do it. But yeah, so
Oh, I'm sure you'll be writing for a long time. And I love there's so many great books that are being self-published. And what must be so frustrating for an author that they have this book in my hand and I know it's great, and you go to query or you go to pitch it, and that topic or that type of story just isn't what they're looking for at the time. It can be a fantastic book, but it's just not the right month or year or whatever it may be. That must be really frustrating.
yeah, and I mean, there's some amazing success stories in terms of traditional publishing and authors who've transitioned from self-publishing to traditional publishing. One of those vehicles I talked about earlier, I mentioned Jonathan French, like so self-published fantasy blog off, run by a traditional published star Mark Lawrence. He kind of came up with the idea, and with 10 fantastic bloggers reviewing 300 books, a lot of people who are successful at that contest, they get into the semifinals and the finals ranks or win it. They attract the attention of agents, they attract the attention of trad publishers, because let's face facts, trad publishers, they want the easy route, right? If
Yeah.
there's a star out there already in the making, then they don't have to go searching for one, and especially if you already have a built up audience, right? However, for all those success stories, you have the stories that you go, oh my gosh, like Michael R. Fletcher, fantastic writer, probably one of the top grimdark writers, self-published or traditional, who has appeal throughout fantasy. Not a lot of people who usually only exclusively read trad published books, they read Michael Fletcher, and he's self-published. Well, he was traditionally published originally, and
Hmm.
his first book, and fantastic book, and met with great critical acclaim, but for whatever reason didn't sell, and then his publisher dropped him,
Hmm.
so he had to take some time and garner some resolve and go back later on and self-publish it, and now he's wildly successful. in my opinion, as a self-published author. I mean, if you talk about grimdark, he's one of the first names that are mentioned. So, you look at something like that, you go, okay, well, do I want to have to, say that happened to me? Okay, you got to potentially fight for you to get your rights back because traditional publishing house owns your rights, and then you have to rebrand your book, and it's I because it lots of advantages. The big advance, if you can get it, and kind of kick back and just worry about writing, and I mean, but there is still a lot of marketing involved because that onus has been downloaded more and more from traditional publishing companies onto the shoulders of the authors. So 40 years ago, you basically just had to write, right, and your publisher took care of the rest. Now it's a lot different model. So
Yeah. Yeah, Michael R. Fletcher is great. And there's so many. Yeah, he's one of my auto buy authors. He's fantastic.
yeah, he is, and a great guy too. Very personable and helps out the writing community and is always there to give a helping hand and support people.
Yeah, I always mention this, but it seems like the people who write the darkest books are the nicest people. It's strange.
There's
It's
some
very
correlation. It's therapy. That's why
yeah,
we're all these tortured souls, tortured writers, and we get it all on the page.
yeah,
So
yeah. Thankfully, there's an outlet for it.
it's
And
like
that's what.
therapy.
Yeah. And you had mentioned the cover. I wanted to ask you about the cover of A Drowned Kingdom because it's very eye catching. It's if you're scanning it's your eyes just go to it. So what went into the cover design? Did you design it or how did that come to be?
Yeah, well, I came up with an image. So I'm self-published, but I use a self-publishing assist company called Friesen Press. I consider them kind of like the Cadillac or Mercedes of Canadian self-publishing assist companies. So they have designers. So I had this image in mind, which was exactly what you see, and they brought it to life. And that image is iconic. And if you read the series, that image is going to be very meaningful throughout the series. And but essentially it's the symbol of Othrin's religion, single god religion, the triangle and the circle. That is the symbol. And I wanted with the first book, because obviously a drowned kingdom, Atlantis drowning. I wanted that water theme, and the water is also symbolic of a lot of things in terms of the character's journey, in terms of things being washed away, expectations being washed away, and beliefs being washed away, and kind of washed back, and rebirth. Water is a big symbol for rebirth and reincarnation almost.
Mm,
And I wanted that iconic symbol in the background, because I think when you read the book, I think one of the biggest questions is what destroyed Atlantis? Was it the single god? Was it something else? Was it simply natural disaster? Was it, so I wanted that symbol to really be front and center. And there's some things you do with books. Obviously, you line up because of the title. That A lines up with the triangle nicely, and the circle lines up with the O, and it's the symmetrical aspect. So yeah.
nice. And it's always amazing to me when you describe what you have in your mind and then someone can bring it to life. And even if you just but it's a must be a skill. I don't have that skill.
Neither do I. Well, I can bring up the concepts, but I have no skill in cover art. There's some fantastic, especially on Twitter. I've met and seen some amazing design artists that do crazy animated covers, like just like wow, just unreal stuff. And my cover is actually pretty simple and toned down for your average fantasy cover, but I wanted it to be classic and kind of streamlined and simple but yet effective. I think my next cover is a bit more flashy. If you've seen the cover for the last Atlanteans, most people see it's pretty, it's kind of flashier. So, but yeah, it's I like my cover, and of course that symbol, I guess, is iconic, and it's on my swag, and it's
Nice.
it's it's part of
Cool.
it's part of the brand, the Drowned Kingdom brand. So
Hmm, that's awesome. And I wondered, what do you love about fantasy? What draws you into the genre?
uh, just the pure escapism, man. Again, excuse me, we talked about some people read it for the themes, if there are these deep themes. Some read it for just the escapism. But regardless, you're going to someplace that's nominally all made up,
Yeah.
and it's not your reality. and you can just get away from your cares and lose yourself in a book. And fantasy books, I mean, for the most part, they tend to be, a pretty decent length, be somewhere the average book between 300 500 pages. So you're gonna spend some time in that world and getting to know these people and their lives, and the creatures that inhabit it, and the magic system, and and that's another big thing about fantasy is the magical system, right? And that's where that delineation, say, with sci-fi is more about the technology, I feel, but fantasy is more about the magic. And that's probably one of the most attractive thing, because everybody wishes, I think, that everybody wishes that there's something beyond reality that can influence reality, whether that's religious, or whether that's spiritual, or whether that's um, something else, right? And my magic in the Drowned Kingdom is very soft, what I consider soft magic. So it doesn't appear to be scientific the way you read some fancy books, fantastic books, and everything's very regimented in terms of when magic can be used, and who can use it, and when, and what the consequences of that magic are using it. And but mine isn't like that. It's very much, you'll feel wondering, is that magic, or is that something else? Is that did that happen because of this rational, logical, natural explanation, or does that happen because so I prefer that kind of magic. I love hard magic books. I've read a lot of fantastic ones, but I prefer that magic where you're not quite sure what caused it, you're not quite sure who caused it. Maybe the person who says they're using magic, maybe it is magic, maybe it's not, maybe it's just all a hoax. Like, I like that. So that ambiguity, I like to
Right.
mess with people.
It in writing a fantasy, like you said, you're spending time in this world, and you're creating a whole world just from your mind. And world building sounds so daunting to me. It must. I wouldn't even know where to start. So when you sit down to create the world, how do you create a world to invite the reader in, and kind of give them an idea of how this world works? Obviously, you can't do it all at once, but so how do you kind of guide the reader through this world you're creating?
Well, because I'm kind of crazy, and it's all in my head. Seriously, what I did was is kind of backwards. I'm just backwards that way, I guess. A lot of writers, especially write from more omnipotent perspectives, third person, etc. You get to see, what this person did, what this person did, what multiple POVs. Everything's omnipotent, right? For me, you're seeing it from one person's point of view, their knowledge. So if they have a great historical knowledge, or knowledge of battle tactics, or knowledge of genealogy, or knowledge of geography, you get what they have and no more, except what they learn from other people, that speak to them or impart knowledge on them. So I kind of take it in that the world is built from the flawed, narrow perspective of the person, just like you and I. So if you live in New York City, right? Let's just say we both live near in New York City. I've been there. You've been to New York City?
I have not been to New York City. Yeah. Been to
Okay.
New York, not New York City. Yeah.
Okay. Well, New York State. Where you been in New York State? Where?
Buffalo.
Okay, I've been to Buffalo last time. Okay, so let's just say say you were born and raised in Buffalo. Um, so your knowledge of the streets is going to be that much more extensive than mine. I come from Canada. I'm there to go shopping, go to Walden Galleria Mall, go to the outlet malls. Go to Cheesecake Factory, maybe go see a Bills game. But again, I'm not native to Buffalo. You're native to Buffalo. You know all the streets. You know the demographics. You know which corner to stay away from because it's dangerous here. The high end places. Your knowledge is, you may know the history of Buffalo. Oh, that there's a artifact over there from the 1900s. Like, you'll have a very different perspective than me. So what I do is I take it as if you're looking from Author's eyes and his brain in terms of what his background is, what he learned about history, what he sees in front of him, what he thinks he sees when something's kind of hokey, his perception of how someone is as a person. It's
Mhm.
his perception. It's not perhaps who they are, but that's what he sees, right? So it's almost like building out from the character. Whereas I think when you do a more omnipotent world building, the world is built and you plop your characters in. But in my case, you're in the character's head, and the world comes out from where his vision. So
Whenever I read fantasy, the I always latch on to those kind of stories when you learn about the world through a character's eyes. So that's always effective for me anyway. That's the way that I best absorb a world. So, but you had me at Bill's game. So
I'm not a Bills fan, but you live in Canada. We don't have an NFL franchise, and the Bills for a lot of people was the closest one. So if you're going to see a game, then you go you scoot over there, or you scoot over to Detroit.
yeah,
Although you may not see a winning game if you scoot over to Detroit, unless it's the other team. But
poor
but
Lions. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
poor
everyone
Lions.
likes to pick out the Lions. Come on, so
Yeah, they'll turn it around one of these days.
I'm sure they
They'll
will.
yeah,
Yeah, in our lifetimes, let's hope. Yeah.
I hope so. Those are poor Detroit fans.
Yeah, I feel bad for them.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any favorite fantasy tropes?
um, yeah, I like typically most fantasy tropes. I honestly do. A lot of people don't like tropes. A lot of people feel that um the thing to be done with tropes, especially in the 21st century, is to avoid them or reinvent them or find these new, fresh ways of reinventing, flipping them on the head or whatever. I like the flipping on the head part. I'd like to think I flip a couple on their head, but I can't really get into the well giving away spoilers. But I do like a lot of tropes. Like I like the hidden heir trope. I'm sorry, but I love that trope. I love that trope. The person who is doesn't know that they're inheriting power or wealth or authority. And they come to know there's sometimes they come from very humble beginnings, and then they find out later on, oh, they're the princess or the queen or the prince or the king. And I love the trope of the reluctant hero that may or may not want to take on their entire destiny, and face it, but they're reluctantly, they for the sake of humankind, they embrace it. And there's very few tropes I don't like. And I think because fantasy, if you write it well, I feel the tropes don't matter, right? If your writing is good and it's compelling and it's interesting, people forget about the tropes. You had a fantastic up and coming young star there, Ryan Cahill, on one of your recent interviews.
Oh,
And
I haven't talked to Ryan.
oh, you haven't talked. I thought you talked. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I thought you
That's
spoke
right.
to Ryan. That was who spoke to Ryan? Oh, it was Blaze. It was Under the Radar
Oh,
Books. I
yeah.
apologize. It was Blaze. I was getting confused. So
He's hard to keep up with. He's a busy guy.
yeah, he's the man on the move, man. He's the man on the move.
Yeah.
So he spoke to Ryan, yes, and I listened to the interview, and fantastic guy, lots of talent. And his series, from what I've heard, I haven't read it yet. It's on my TBR, but it's very much it's classic fantasy, dragons and mages and the whole thing. But it's extremely hot. It's extremely hot. The series, it's selling like crazy. It's extremely popular, and and so I guess he must have done those tropes right.
Yeah.
So I think if you do it right, then it's not going to matter. So
Yeah, Ryan Cahill is definitely my radar. There's so many great books I want to read. It's hard to keep up. And Blaze is he's it's great to see these
oh
authors
yeah.
get some, yeah, he does a really great job with his interviews. So
Yeah, he
it's
is phenomenal. Blaze is phenomenal. He's such a kind, genuine, supportive person. Like he's just amazing. So yeah, he's
yeah.
fantastic. Like you, very much like you. He's he's got that, like you. He's got that calm demeanor, and just
Yeah.
never gets ruffled about anything. And yeah, so
In my mind I am, I just don't show it. But yeah, he does a really great job, and it's great to have so many really kind of supportive people in the fantasy community. Just so because there's so many great books that more people should be reading, and it's good to help boost that signal for everyone.
especially self-published.
Yeah.
I mean, self-published books. I mean, I could go on and on about how great the self-published fantasy genre is. um, you know, there was a time where I think not too long ago, it was just this inequity. People just saw self-published as just being, trash, and traditional publishing was legitimate. And unless you're traditionally published, you weren't a legitimate author, and the authenticity was in question. And I think that that perception is really changing now. I think the lines are really blurring, and I think because you have so many fantastic self-published authors that are, people like Will White, he's on the New York Times
Mhm.
bestsellers list. Like, you have all these authors that sell like crazy and have this huge fan base, and they're self-published. And there's some real quality writing out there. SBFBO, again, that Mark
Yeah.
Boyne started, highlights a lot of that talent. I now read pretty well a mix, of self 50-50 mix of self-published versus traditionally published. And as a blogger, I found that, I have to say, like, the beauty of self-published books is that they can write about anything they want.
Yeah.
They don't have to stick to this rigid formula. And while they're worried about selling, for traditional publishing houses, that's all they're worried about selling. And they have their algorithms with trends and what they think it will sell and what won't. And they're very precise about that. And there's a reason for that. Their business model, because they're all about selling books.
Right.
But traditional self-published authors are all about writing the stories they want to write, and giving that to the reader, letting the reader decide if they want it. So, and like I said, I can name, like, I have so many self-published friends. I feel bad when I do podcasts, especially. I want to name them all, but
Yeah.
that would take several days. You know,
Yeah.
the some of the big ones. The Holly Tinsleys,
Mhm.
We Met at Ash and Shadow, Tim Hardy, Hall of Bones, Bjorn Larson, Children, Jacob Sanox. He writes, Dark Oak, R.P.
Mhm.
Lauer, Skies of Gaia. I have some really great under the radar books and authors are coming up. T.L. Coughlin, uh, of Us and Them. That's more YA. Lucian Telford, who writes the Sequence, great book, sci-fi, really amazing writer. Sean Bell, Secret of the Sword. And then there's so many, and of course there's Krista Matar. Oh,
Yeah.
Legacy of the Brightwash. Anybody in SPFUO, basically, you could take all 300 books and you'd probably find something really good. Of 300 out of 300 books, you'd probably be well off reading all of them. And then, of course, and again, there's the really big names who they were self-published. They've been kicking around for a while. We talked about Michael Fletcher, Ben Galley.
Mhm.
He's a huge, influential name in the self-published, fantasy milieu. You know, so Michael Fletcher, Ben Galley, Clayton Snyder, another
Yeah.
fantastic grimdark author, top grimdark author. I mean, you can go on and on, but there's just so many, right? Eve Kagoshi writes romantic dystopian fantasy. She writes Neglected Merge. Like, yeah, don't get me started on this topic because I'll just keep going. So sorry, that's my bad.
No, I'm
I
gonna come back
apologize.
and and all the authors I wasn't familiar with before, I'm gonna have to go buy those books. So yeah. So I was gonna let you go on as long as you wanted to. Yeah, I do, and you mentioned it, but I do think that that attitude that self-published isn't, I guess, isn't worthy, or it's not good. I think that's changing. I think that people are opening their eyes to how good so many great, there's so many self-published books that just are just fantastic. It's, you can't deny the quality. I mean, there's so many of them.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I can't forget about Zemil Akhtar,
Yeah.
Gunmetal Gods. Right.
Yeah.
That was great. The podcast that you were kind enough to have me on, with May Between the Pages and Laura Lullabies. Great bloggers, too, fantastic bloggers, and Zemil, talking about Zemil's books, and the three of us. Maybe Between the Pages and Laura Lullabies and myself having our fan person moment and getting to gush about Gunmetal Gods. Thank you so much for arranging. That was fun. I'm glad we're going to go do it again too with Conqueror's Blood. I'm looking forward to that. So that was a
Yeah.
great discussion.
Yeah, it was really great. And I was, I think I'd mentioned, I think I told Tay I was just on a natural high all weekend after that.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun. It was just, how often do you get to do that from people all over the world, and we just all met just for the love we share of reading and of storytelling from so many different backgrounds and all over the world. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. It's just,
Yeah, I was on high too, man. I was pumped. I was like, okay, can we do this again? Can we just keep
yeah,
talking? Like, yeah, it was awesome.
yeah,
It was awesome.
tough to, because you want to do it all the time, but books take a while to read sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, let's do it tomorrow. It's like, I can't read it by then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a great hobby. So the time that you spent, so from the time that you spent, writing the story, getting, editing, getting it published. What have you learned about yourself through that process?
Well, I've learned that I'm very grateful that I'm not doing it alone. I'm very grateful for having a self-publishing assistance company and self-published authors. I mean, to some degree or another, some people have the talent to design their own covers, edit their own books, get into print. They can put on Amazon. They can navigate algorithms with that. They can do everything, right? They're great at marketing. Some authors are sometimes some all authors. They can do it all. Most of us need some help in at least one aspect or another. So you're obviously contracting this bits and pieces of the publishing process out. But essentially, I'm very grateful for Friesen Press in that regard because of one-stop shopping, and they do most of that, right? The editors in-house there, the cover designer, the
Mm.
layout people. That's all. So I write the book and I send it in, and I pay for that. But yeah. So I mean, there's some cost regardless as being a self-published author. You know that you're bearing the cost on yourself, and that's a difference and the disadvantage to being traditionally published. But the other thing I've learned about myself is that, thank God, besides Friesen, mainly thank God I have my wife, Debbie, who is just phenomenal, who is my partner in this entrepreneurial investment. She agreed to do it as a team. She can't write the books, but she does a hell of a lot else. She's basically the publishing manager, the marketing manager. She keeps me on track and on task. With the
Oh, that's
and
cool.
she is so supportive. It's a significant investment of time and money involved, and she's just wonderful. She has a marketing background. She's so smart.
Mm.
She's so savvy, and she sees things that I don't. And it's just a joy to work with someone you love and to
Yeah.
work, to run a business together. It's just an amazing feeling, and you won't always agree, right? You won't, but you're a team, so you're aligned, and before you make a decision, you make that decision as a team, and you hash it out, and when you leave the room, you're aligned and moving forward with a certain course of action. So thank God I have Deb. I don't think that I would have enjoyed as much success as I have enjoyed without her. There's no question that I would have.
Mm.
I don't know. I couldn't have done the whole thing without her. Without her love and support and backing, I would not have enjoyed the success that I have. So those are some of the things I've also learned. Sorry, just to quickly add that, I'm based on my regular full-time job. My current state where I'm in life. I can write one book a year, and I think do that well. Write a quality book a year. There's some authors that are extremely prolific and can pump out 3, 4, 5 books a year.
Yeah.
uh, and I can't do that. So I think I can write hopefully one quality book a year that I can present to readers that they will enjoy. And yeah, that's about as much commitment as I can make at this time. Maybe when I'm retired, I'll be able to write two, but it's a lot. I find it's so thrilling and rewarding, and but it's also draining.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to cheat your readers. I want my biggest goal is to improve as a writer, to get better with each book. That you go, wow, like, oh, that's a big difference from book 1 to 2. Oh, book 3, like, and I so far I hope I'm on track for that. Of course, so far, knock on wood, according to the people who've read both books, they feel that book 2 is a step up, and I think book 3 is going to be a watershed book that hopefully will blow people on the water. Then 4, 5, and 6 are just crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then 7 wraps everything up. So hopefully, if you invest in the series, one thing I learned is like, you have to play the long game. And my book is a long game book. It's Drown King was a slow burn. It is not fast paced. It only really picks up. It's divided in 3 parts. It really starts to pick up in the second part, and the third part really starts to pick up more. And then hopefully you're left at there like, oh man, it's over. Like I want more. That's what people have told me that like the book. So you learn about things like pacing. You learn about not taking either praise or criticism too much to heart either way. You listen to people, obviously you listen to readers. You can't be tone deaf, but you have to write your book, and you ride the highs and lows, right? And because I tell you, man, this is my hands are imposter syndrome, and that's the writer. That's what it does to you, man. Like that's
Yeah.
that's where you are. You're right in there, man. So you got to try and fight that and resist that, the feeling that you're inadequate, and it's you're not as good as you are, or you'll never be as good as you want to be. Like, that's something that you have to combat all the time.
Yeah, it's tough. And that experience with your partner must have been made this whole thing a lot more I don't want to say more special, but a lot um very unique. And it's a bonding time for both of you to do this together. And it must have made this whole just really that much more fulfilling that you did it together. And it's you can hold it and you can hold the book in your hands and be on this journey together. That must be very special for you to share that.
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't matter if your partner doesn't, or your people in your life with your partner, your your mother, father, brother, sister, your dog. They don't have to. They can't write the book for you, but they can support in other ways, if they're willing to whatever degree they're able. And I think that's the big thing, that because the writing community is the same way. I couldn't have, I wouldn't be where I am in terms of success if not for the writing community. People like yourself. The writing community is made up of authors, bloggers, agents, podcasters, publishers, writers, poets, and all these people, readers, bigger, there's no writers without readers, and all these people. You'll find these people will go out of their way to support you and do things to help you and promote you and guide you in the right direction. And you can cry on their shoulder when things are rough, and they celebrate your successes, and they pump you up and they boost you. Like, and yeah, we don't. I don't think we succeed in isolation. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and that's how we all succeed. Like, and we're not competing against each other. Do you know what I mean? Like the people that like Michael Fletcher's book don't may not like my book. They might, but I mean, they're two very different books. But Michael Fletcher has his audience and always will. Hopefully I have mine and always will. Name your writer, Christopher Tarr, Bjorn Larson, Holly Tinsley, Tim Hardy, Jacob Sadek. They all have their unique books and their unique audiences. Yeah, there's crossover. You may enjoy a certain book, and they may all be kind of the same. They may sound somewhat the same, but yeah, all books are unique and different, and every book has its audience. So you're not competing against your fellow writers. You're there to support them, boost them up, and they're there to boost you up. And everybody, there's room enough for everybody. There's more than enough readers out there for everybody to have an audience. So
Definitely. And speaking of readers, I wanted to ask you about the audiobook. Because the audiobook for Drone Kingdom, what was that experience like to get the audiobook done?
well, you want to talk about things I learned? I learned that I suck at being an audiobook narrator. Like, I did part of the exercise is you had to read a passage of your book that you really thought needed to be emphasized. You wanted the narrators to really bring out, and also I'd done one for, it was a podcast I did. I think it was Jeff Rutherford, the Writer Read podcast, where he asked the writers come on the podcast to read an excerpt from the book. So, Steve, I probably did about 10 takes to read this tiny little minute long thing. I kept stumbling and fumbling with my words and like, oh, I made a mistake there. And I mean, holy moly, I'm reading it. Like, how could I, why am I so incompetent? And it's like, wow, I gained new respect for audiobook narrators, the voice actors. They're just phenomenal. And um, the actors, wow. Like, the whole experience, I did through Friesen Press, my self-published assist company, and they just started doing audiobooks. And I was lucky to be. They actually asked me to do one as one of the top selling authors. Were kind of asked to be the guinea pigs for this new audio division, and wow, like, I got really blessed with Adam Curtin and Sean Polite. And Adam Curtin is the voice of Othran, and wow, does he capture the sneery, disdainful, you're the scum on the bottom of my shoe kind of, with that hoity-toity, he's very, very polished British accent. Like, and then Sean Polite does a lot of the other characters, and there's some really colorful characters, and they just do a fantastic job. It's just, wow, I can't wait till it comes out, hopefully in a month or so. But yeah, it's I mean, it was really important for me to have an audiobook. I want to be able to reach people that, for whatever reason, can't physically read a book, or don't, or prefer not to. My wife is a big audio fan, and I don't even, to be honest, I don't really even listen to audiobooks. My wife is a huge audiobook fan. She listens to them religiously on her drive to and from work. She's got an hour both ways. and it is one of the really emerging trends
Mm.
in books, and very popular. So I felt there was something, especially with the first book, it had to be done. We'll see if we can do it for you know 20 books, but we'll see what happens. But at least the first one, we wanted that for sure. We wanted that option for the readers. So
Mm. Yeah, I know what you mean about reading them, because whenever I try and read just a synopsis or something, I always stumble over my words. So I couldn't imagine if it was your own book and they were asking you to read it. It's a lot of pressure.
yeah, that's why these professionals do that. I leave it to the professionals, not the amateurs like me.
Exactly. And did they come to you and say, and kind of say, well, how do you want this character portrayed, or do you have any? Did you give them kind of tips on what you had in mind for each character?
Excuse me. Yep, yep. We had to outline. I had to give them a detailed outline of all the characters, what their personalities were like, how I thought they would sound, what kind of accents, they would have, based on who they are, what their approximate ages were, who they had conflicts with, who they liked. So it was very extensive in terms of the background information I had to provide. And thankfully, and the author, sorry, the actors, they both read the book up front because they said they need to immerse themselves, and they read the book, and thankfully they liked it, and it sold them on the project because again, it was you're putting this out to different actors who want to take the project on, and but the actors have to accept, and they have to believe in the project. So I strongly feel that yeah, they took it on because they believed in it. They felt that it would be a great mesh, a great fit for both their skills and the writing. So yeah, there was a lot of background stuff we had to provide, and I had to listen to auditions obviously to see because there was many actors that auditioned. I had to select the right ones. That was tough because you feel, oh man, they're all so good, and like, oh, that he, and then but you ultimately have to make a choice, and it came down to Adam and Sean, and I think it worked well. So
That is tough to have to pick people for that. Yeah, it's really tough position to be in. But glad it's working out. And do you have so there's not a release date just yet? They're still putting the.
not quite yet, but I'm hoping hopefully the next month or two. Kind of almost on the heels or in front of or behind the Last of the Atlanteans, which is book 2 in the Drowned Kingdom saga, which is it releases coming pretty soon too, is imminent. So
Oh,
um yeah, so as I said, it's been a year. I want to put up a book every year. February 2nd was the release date, 2021, of A Drowned Kingdom. So now it's a year old. So hopefully in March you will see the Last of the Atlanteans.
very nice. Yeah, I'm planning to be ready for that. And so I did have because you're not only, and you mentioned you're a blogger and reviewer, but so you write, you're a blogger and a reviewer. How do you find the time to do everything?
Well, being boring, probably. Like I have I'm in a different stage of my life. My youngest child is about to go to university, and between Deb and I, we have 7 kids. They're all out of the house pretty well, and they only come back when they eat food or money. You know how it is, and that no, we love them all. They're fantastic, and so you have that time and that freedom. I work shift work. And in some ways it's great because when you have those extra chunks of days off, that's writing. But I'm pretty regimented. I am someone who is, I'd like to think I'm fairly organized. You'd have to be to do all this stuff. So
Mhm.
I devote, 80 to 90% of my spare time to writing related activities, either writing my own books and marketing my own books and everything associated with that, or blogging. And I'm thankful, grateful to be a blogger and this one of the assistant editors with the wonderful Brianna Schneider at Before We Go blog, who's led by the awesome Beth Tabler, who's nominated for a Stabby Award from the Reddit Fantasy Stabby community. So hoping she does what she certainly deserves it. Beth is an icon in the community. She's amazing. So she runs that blog, and yeah, so I when I'm not reading, I'm writing. Either writing blogs, my own blog for my website, writing for the blog for Before We Go, doing reviews, writing articles. I do a feature on my personal blog called Six Elemental Interviews, named after the 6 elemental goddesses in A Drowned Kingdom. And it's a series of 6 questions to creatives, to bring exposure to those creatives and to promote them, and let the readers get to know about some people you may or may not have heard of. And that's done. I do 2 of those every month. So, and I'm pretty well booked for the year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that takes up, but these are all great things that I think help me become better at being a writer and help me become better at being an entrepreneur because it's a business. And, um, reading more books makes you a better writer. Learning about authors makes you a better author and better at all the activities and skills you need to be a self-published author to run your own business. So the more I'm immersed in the whole community, the more bloggers I meet, the more podcasts I go on, the more people's books I read and review, the more like it all feeds back into making me better. And like I said, I'm striving for continuous improvement. So it's a good thing. It's busy.
Yeah.
Wow. But as you know from doing this, you're busy, right? But it's a labor of love, right? I can't imagine doing anything else. So
Yeah, it was well said. And so the time you spent reviewing and blogging and interviewing, was there anything specific that a light kind of went off in your brain that you implemented in your own process that it kind of came to you during all this time, doing all these other activities?
well, I think the one thing that stuck out is that from specifically from seeing other bloggers, other podcasters, YouTubers, people like yourself, people who do only written reviews to the roadies and, being part of Before We Go blog, seeing SBFBO judged. I was a participant, seeing what the other bloggers thought of different books, how they evaluated them, really trying to be fair and impartial and yet accentuate the positives of every book. And that's me. I'd like to think I'm a positive guy. So that's very much how I prefer to review books, keeping 99.9% of it positive and any critiques to a minimum. I think the one thing I learned though is that again, I said it before, I think there honestly is an audience for almost every single book conceivable out there. So if you can find a way to direct a book that you don't particularly like towards the audience that would like it, I think you've succeeded. And I take that back to my book. So not everybody's gonna like my book, and that's okay. But some people will like my book, and you need to find those people. However you do it, getting the word out through wonderful people like you is one way, and I try to do the same, right? Through my blogging, through my interviews, author interviews, just like you're doing by featuring someone like me, for which I'm so grateful. So, but I think the main thing is accentuating the positives and helping readers find their way to those books, especially those kind of obscure books, those under the radar books that perhaps not many people at all have read about. In that regard, I'd say, and I know the statistics are sales don't mean everything, not just sales, but just exposure in terms of awareness on social media and how many reviews on Goodreads and things like that and on Amazon, like those books that should have a lot more and maybe don't have that traction to
Mhm.
help people get that traction. So, which is what you do, and is very selfishly and selflessly, sorry, and that's we so appreciate that. Yeah, so I try to do the same.
I want to shout out before we go blog. I'll leave it in the description, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast, because
Hey,
I
crew.
yeah, it's great group of people, just a
Oh,
wonderful group.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
The talent in that group is like,
yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
And when Brianna asked me if I wanted to, post my blogs, because I just write blogs, I was just kind of goofing off on my site, like, I'll type it out. And she asked me to cross post. I was like, well, are you sure you're talking to the right person? It's been really great to just. I don't participate a whole lot in the chat we have because I try to not say anything dumb, but there's so many.
You'll
There's
never
I
do.
just like to just sit and just listen and read with all of you. So it's really great group of people. So those of you who aren't familiar with that site, go check it out. I'll leave it in the description. Great site with a bunch of books you may not have heard about yet. So check
And
that out.
that's the other thing I want to emphasize is that the team. And for those of you who are not aware, because he's too modest to toot his own horn, Steve is a member of Before We Go blog, and we're very honored and blessed to have him. And the diversity of that team, you have again, writers, podcasters, straight up bloggers. You have everything, and it just creates this atmosphere. and everybody's so supportive, and it's just under the best leadership. It's just a great place to be, and we're very happy to have you on board, and it's I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been fun. I think I submitted a couple, but I think they get scheduled and stuff. So I'm a little nervous for it to be posted.
Nothing to be
But
nervous about. It's gonna be awesome. We can't, we're looking forward to seeing your stuff out there, and just another medium for you, to draw attention to your podcast and your work, and now it's gonna be in a different medium as well. So yeah, really excited about that.
yeah, really really great. And so we did have a couple of questions because when we posted on Twitter about us meeting today, so we did have a couple of questions. So I'll go over those here. I have them pulled up. So the first question was from friend Noel Zamat. He's the author of The Archer's Thread.
Yes.
His first question was, why did you write this book?
I wrote this book, I mentioned earlier, because I want to tell a tale about Atlantis. Is always fascinating me. It's just so incredible to think that right now there's people out there right now actively searching for Atlantis, if it ever existed, right? So many people, it's such an intriguing concept. This utopian society, supposedly that sank, if there's ruins, if it ever existed, and the way Plato describes it, it feels like it's part of history. It feels like it actually existed, and I always want to write about that because it's a subject I love, and I also wanted to write, as I mentioned earlier, about some of these compelling themes, and you have that almost like a forum to discuss that, and to really see what it'd be like to explore a character that was very complicated and very convoluted, but yet I felt was compelling, and to see if how he would win over maybe his detractors, or if he could win over his detractors. When you read that character, because for some people they read a book and they have to really love the main characters. I totally understand that,
Mm.
right? For some people, they want to see the train wreck. They don't
Yeah.
mind having someone who's totally messed up, and they want to see, like, oh, this guy's messed up. Oh man, he is that messed up. Oh well, can he be less messed up? Oh, is he gonna really crash and burn? Oh, let's see if he crashes and burns. Like they want that. So like I thought that would be really fun to write. Way more fun than writing the goody two shoes who's always amazing. He has
Yeah.
supplementary characters that are a bit more. No, most of them are pretty gray in my book. They're pretty flawed and messed up themselves. But there's a couple of characters there that are generally pretty good overall. But um, I, I, with my book, I was more of a caveat here. I always warn people, like, I we talked about this with Zamil, and I mentioned the same. I attribute the same thing to him and the George R. R. Martin's of the world, etc. Like, I have no compunction in killing off characters, so don't get attached to anybody. Because that character you really like, don't get attached to them. So not saying who's going to live and who dies, but just to be safe, don't get attached to them. Over the course of 7 books, people are going to die. So if you read my battle scenes, people are going to die eventually, right?
Yeah.
So law of averages. So
Nice.
Arthur is a wanted man. So you hang with him too long, it's not going to go well for you. So
Nice. So his next question, I think I stole a little bit of thunder from him, but the next one was, how do you go about building a world?
yeah, so I mentioned that earlier. I build outward from the character, so it's the character's flawed, limited perspective and what he sees. So because he only has so much information, he only has so much information through other characters. He only has so much information through what he processes with his own eyes and his own senses. So the world building is very much, yep, Authorin sees this, and that's what you see as the reader. Authorin hears this, that's what you hear as a reader. You don't get to hear or see or taste or touch or feel the rest, right? So you have to rely on his unreliable experiences to experience the world that I create around you. So that's how I essentially build the world. Hopefully, it's enough because one of the things that, for the most part, so far with the first book, people have said that my world building, it seems to be pretty extensive. So hopefully it's good enough.
That's a big compliment. The next one was, did you base any characters on people that you know?
Oh yeah. um, the characters are mostly composites of people, so they're bits and pieces of people I've met through my life. Some of them are friends, some are family, some are coworkers, some are people that I didn't particularly get along with. I don't know. I think I'm a person that I think I'm a person that usually gets along with most people, but there'll always be someone in your life that you may have challenges with, and certain characters I'm based particularly on family members, largely on family members. For example, one of people's favorite characters in the book, her name is Lacey, and she's partially based on my stepdaughter,
Mm,
Laura, who's wonderful. And she's not as well. You have to read Lacey to see, but a lot of Lacey's more negative qualities, that are accentuated. Laura doesn't have them to that degree, but obviously it's a fictional character. You ramp everything up by tenfold. But I took a lot of Laura's good qualities and incorporated in Lacey. If you feel that Lacey has good qualities, because she's a very controversial character, kind of like Othra. But in any case, there are specific characters that are based on family members too, and you'll see them as the book progresses.
so do these family members know which characters
Oh
are
yeah, oh yeah, they don't. Well, some of them haven't. I mean, some of the characters don't appear till books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they know that they're coming. They don't know, they haven't read the book, so they don't know what form, what iteration it's gonna take. But I've told them in a general sense what the character is about. So they think it's cool. They seem to get a big chuckle out of it. So
So the characters that are based on people you know, that and they know, and eventually they'll know which characters they're based on. Do you worry about killing those characters off?
well, again, it's a lot of the family member, the characters are based on family members. Remember, this is a 7 book cycle, so again, without giving away spoilers, some people will live to ripe old age and then pass away, and some people won't. But I think for them, they're just enjoying the experience. Like, even if for some people it's cool, like, oh, you're gonna kill me off. Well, that's kind of neat, like, is my death scene really good? Like, do I, so it's kind of fun.
That's what I would want, is a really great death scene if I was ever in the book. So the next question that he submitted was, what parallels are there between the world you created and ours?
Ooh, well, based on what we talked about in themes, too many, unfortunately. As I said, Autrin is a bigot, and the book explores, bigotry in many of its forms. Explores religious intolerance, explores colonialism, explores racism, misogyny, homophobia. So these unfortunate things that exist in our world today. So in only too real fashion, and probably in the last, 5 years or so, we've seen some of the things that have always been part of the fabric of our society, the ugly part of the fabric, along with all the amazing things about our world, probably come more to the public consciousness, mostly because of, we live in an age where, technology allows us to see these things, instantaneously, from whether they occur in one side of the world or the other. So
Yeah.
those things are all prevalent in my books, because they're prevalent in reality. I believe in writing a realistic book, just like things like, I don't, I think romance and love and sex should be part of a book. It depends on to what degrees. I mean, I'm not writing erotica, but like it's great. An erotic writer, it's only natural that those things are part of their book. But in general, I think you're writing a fiction book. Those are part of life. Fiction is about life. It's a reflection of life. So battle scenes, fighting, war, disease, all those things, those are unfortunate parts of life, positive things, happy jokes, little quirky things about different cultures and societies. Those are all, things that, I feel should be part of books. So I just try to make it as realistic as possible.
That's what I love about grimdark or dark fantasy or whatever it is they explore those types of themes and don't shy away from them. So one of the reasons I love the genre. So um, Tim Hardy submitted a question also
Ha,
to
Tim, Hall of Bones, SPFBO finalist, by the way, current
yeah,
SPFBO finalist. So we'll see. We'll see.
fingers crossed for him.
Yep.
Where does P.L. Stewart draws energy and relentless positivity from because Lord knows I need some.
Well, that's coming from a pretty positive, optimistic, and wonderful person, Tim. Tim is a definition of a true gentleman. He's such a warm, smart, great writer. Very insightful, and well, my positivity comes from, I mean, thankfully, again, having great relationships at home and outside of home with people in writing community, with my wife, my kids. I'd like to, hopefully, I'd like to think, with my, my faith, like whatever God is, he, she, it, they. I don't know. As you get older, I wonder. It seems to me, it matters to me less, what that is. But my faith, again, it gives me positivity. Again, my relationships, and the fact that I'm alive, healthy, and able to write. That's a blessing, right? And so that's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to have the abilities, the faculties, the finances to self-publish, the support of the community, support of your family, this all a privilege. So it's easy to stay positive. Like I said, sometimes that imposter syndrome smacks you, right? And there's other challenges that await you, especially being a self-published author. But you know what? Like I said, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing, and it is a privilege to do it. So I'm very cognizant of that. I'm very conscious of how lucky I am to be able to look and see someone I respect like you, look back there and I see that book on that shelf. That's my book. I wrote it. Like that's a big deal, right? That's kind of special. So
That's really cool. Yeah, I think, and for me anyway, surrounding yourself with positive people is important too because they can lift you up, and not because if you surround yourself with negative people, they can pull you down too. And it's very important for me
yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
the Taylor, she's the
Oh yeah. She's
between the
awesome.
pages. Yeah, I'll leave her channel also in the description.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah, she's great. Really fascinated about how she speaks different languages and
Yeah,
yeah,
Japanese, and yeah, that's yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
hats off to her.
Yeah, exactly. So her comment was, "We had previously talked about how the creative process can be inconsistent with flashes of inspiration followed by lulls. Is there any technique you've developed to help jumpstart those inspired feelings?"
That was a great question by Taylor. Yeah, we talked about that with Zamil on our conversation I referred to when it was you, Zamil. Um, Maybe between the pages, Taylor and or lullabies. Um, uh, when you and I talked earlier, Steve, about the shift work thing,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a lot of it's patience. So when I'm not in the mood to write and I'm not feeling it, I don't push it, man. I don't force myself. Some people can, and that's an effective way of breaking through slumps and breaking through lack of inspiration and those cold spells with writing, writer's block, whatever you wanna call it. But for me, I'm like, no, man, I'm gonna go watch the game. I'm gonna go work out. I'm gonna spend some time with the wife. I'm gonna do whatever, read, watch, but that's my method of coping. It's not very scientific but my method is simply when I'm not feeling it, I don't push it. But when I'm feeling it, I can write in a maniacal fashion for days at a time, and it's like my wife was like, "You wrote almost all day long." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." She's holy moly, like yeah, and that's how. And sometimes it's like, "Oh, you haven't written for a couple of days, or a week or two?" Nope. And I have I've learned to be okay with that, and that
Mm.
acceptance of my limitations as a writer and my limitations on forcing myself through creative slumps is part of the learning process that helps me be more effective. Because I know, like I said, I have that little clock in my internal clock ahead. You have a deadline. Okay, well, if I'm not feeling right now, I'm in trouble. But then usually, magically, I've been very blessed that eventually it comes, and when it comes, it comes. So.
Yeah. When it comes to if you're in the middle of something else, do you drop what you're doing and get to writing?
Oh man, like all the cliches. Like you wake up and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I got to write that down. Or you're driving to work. Oh, I gotta, I'll take a quick voice note because I gotta, or you're doing something else and then it's like, oh, you're exercising. Like, that's a great idea. And so when those things flow, the thing you try to do is capitalize on that, right?
Mhm.
And take that little note, that little voice recording or do whatever, and then later on you can transcribe that later, and it may be this really great nugget that really fits well into this one scene, and it's been just you're writing something, it just doesn't sound that way, and then later on your exercise like, oh, you're on the treadmill's like, I got it, and then you stop and get back on. Like, so yeah, that's I use those techniques and tools. A lot of writers, I'm sure, do.
Yeah.
So
It's funny you mentioned exercising because I there's a YouTuber, his name's Ran Van Duzer, and he always said, "I get my best thinking done when I'm riding my bike," and then for me, that's when I get my thinking done is when I'm on the bike. So it's I don't know what it is about exercise, but just get my and then if I don't write it down, I forget. Of course, you forget, and when you're done, you're like, "What was that
yeah,
idea?"
all those endorphins, man, everything, you're feeling good, and you're the blood flowing through your brain, and I guess it just helps. It helps you think better, and yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions I try and ask every guest, and there's a new one I wanted to ask you. Well, a newer one, and that was, do you have any favorite family recipes?
Favorite family recipes? Well, I so Barbados is where I want to retire. My mother's from Barbados, and I love all food. I mean, but I love West Indian food. That's one of my favorites. Caribbean food, and my cousin of mine, actually, when my wife went down there, a couple of years ago now, she gave my wife a recipe for this dish called castarique,
Mm,
and it's like a stew almost, but it percolates over several days. You just keep adding meat and keep adding meat, like goat, oxtail, you know, beef. Like it's just, and then you simmers and you put sauces in. It just keeps, and then you keep adding to it even after you start serving. You still keep adding, and just it lasts forever, right? And you freeze it, and that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite recipes that's come around the house recently.
wow,
Uh,
it sounds like
Sorry, pepper pot. Sorry, I'm so silly. Pepper pot is the recipe. Castarique is the special sauce that goes in, but pepper pot, it's called pepper pot. That's the recipe. Castarique is the sauce that goes in there. So
oof, that sounds really good. And that question was recommended from Sarah Chorn. She's the author, editor, blogger, reviewer. She does everything. So
oh yeah, yeah. Sarah is quite a force in the community. Has been around for a long time. She's one of the people that was instrumental in helping to get SPFBO off the ground as well. I hear, and very well known author. And actually, I'm reading one of her books for February. She wrote where we highlight female writers who use the pronouns she, her. And Sarah Chorn's book, Seraphina's Lament, is probably, I think it's on your shelf. You have everything, don't you, man? I got to come to your house, man. You raid your library. You have everything.
I'm on by.
Um, but so I'm reading her book probably 2 books from now.
Mm.
So yeah.
So the next question I try and ask all of my guests is, if the zombie apocalypse happened today, what would be your weapon of choice?
My weapon of choice. Um, my weapon of choice would be a really, really, really good hiding spot, because um, at the risk of sounding like a coward, you find that if any zombie movie you watch, Walking Dead, whatever you name it, right? Like it's the people who hide the best, the people that survive, right? Like it's usually a matter of time until the zombies get you. Um, whether you have, a gun, you blow their head off or whatever you do, like, but it's the people that hide the best, they're the ones that make it out of there. So you got to find a stronghold, someone that, either somewhere that's so impregnable that they can't get to you, or it's so secreted that they can't find you. So, if I'm gonna survive the apocalypse, I need a stash spot. So, that's your best weapon. Retreat is the better part of valor in the case of zombie apocalypse. So
Yeah, those damn preppers will be ready for it, huh? With the bunkers.
yeah.
So the next question was, what was your first job?
My first job would have been Probably selling newspapers, probably as a
Mm.
newspaper boy. We were probably 12, 13 years old. Is probably, the first job I actually, got money for, I think. So, which is kind of cool. Like, I mean, it kind of wasn't great in the winter, but summer was awesome. And you're a kid, so you're getting out there, you ride your bike, and you run door to door, you go all these cool places, and you do with your friends a lot of times, and you drag your friends along, and you make the excuse, oh, let's go check out so and so, let's go play video games. So, oh, there's this cute girl that lives over there, deliver the paper, and the whole nine. So yeah, that's the first job that I remember having, I think.
Do you remember what you learned from that job, or what your takeaway was that kind of stayed with you through your life?
Oh, that job was just so much fun. It'd probably be the jobs that came slightly afterwards, like working in restaurants, like McDonald's and that, because those jobs are really character building. Like I found those jobs were really. I recommend anybody to go into the service industry. Get your kids, if they're going to start off, probably do that, because you learn how to cope with people, learn how to cope with difficult situations. You learn how to, your work ethic has to be there. I remember even being a manager in restaurants later on. That I mean, I remember when I first started in restaurants young. You see the manager going out and mopping the lobby. You see the manager taking cash. You see the manager hauling deliveries and doing all his paperwork and doing inventory and ordering, purchasing, and all that. And you really learn work ethic. You learn, no one's above the team. That's a team effort. That takes a team effort to get to run a restaurant. And I think that's probably the job that I've learned the most, from. So those sort of jobs. So yeah.
You learn a lot dealing with people. It's especially in an industry like that. You learn a lot about yourself and how to talk to people and how to not overreact. There's a lot of lessons learned in that industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I always try to expand my repertoire and the questions I ask and try to get new ideas. So if roles were reversed and you were in my position, was there a question that you would have asked that I did not ask?
Um, No, you're really comprehensive. So, like, it was great, great interview. If I were just me, as I am, PL, asking Steve, I would want to know, why what made you decide to start doing this, to start doing your channel, and like what prompted you to take this on. Great, we're so thankful you did, but huge investment of time, obviously. So
Hmm.
what made you
Like,
do it?
put me on the spot here.
Why not, man? Why not turn the tables?
Well, for a long time, I read a lot of comic books. I read a lot of indie books, a lot of indie comic books, and I had always said, "Well, I should read more novels. I should read more novels." And I thought, well, I was my family and I thought, let's get a Kindle, and we'll all get Kindles for Christmas, and so I started looking at YouTube videos on Kindle reviews and things like that, and I found these channels that talked about books. I didn't even know it existed until I ran into them. So I started watching these channels, and they talked about all these books I didn't know about and how awesome they were. And then the indie books, I found the channels that talked about indie books like Slowly Read and Mike's Book Reviews, and there's a couple other ones.
Yeah, that's good one.
So that
Good ones.
I was like, well, I didn't really realize there's indie novels out there. I didn't know that existed because I have like a soft spot in my heart for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I thought, well, I want to start doing that too. So I started reading, and then I wanted someone to talk to about it. So then I thought, well, I'll try to create a channel too. Why not? So then I just started this thing and just started talking about books. And then Jeff Lane, he's an author who we had we started a club where we started reading a book a month, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, I have this book. I'll give everyone in the club a free copy if you guys want to read it for the month." And I said, "Well, cool." So we started chatting, and then I told my wife, because I like to talk to people, I like to interact, I like to learn, and so I kept telling my wife, I think I thought about asking Jeff if he wants to just like sit and have an interview with me, and she said we should ask him, like maybe he'll say yes, and if he says no, then that's okay. And I thought, well, I'll ask him, and he was nice enough to say yes, and so I did, and I just fell in love with the whole process and had a really great
that's awesome.
time. So then, of course, I wanted to talk to everybody. I want to talk to everyone that I can. So here I am. But I
World
just
domination.
yeah,
Yeah,
I just have a blast with it. I just have a lot of fun with it. And I learned so much from everybody I talked to. I learned so much from everyone. I love hearing different perspectives and different ideas, and the process of creating something like a book is such a special experience that it's just it's really fascinating to me, and I get to meet awesome people like you doing this thing. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
it's great. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and so you know, it's been a lot of it's been a blast. It's been more than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I can see the passion for that, and it comes out in your interviews and comes out in, your guests. You bring that in your guests, and yeah, it's just fantastic. And again, podcasters. I mean, I do as many of these as I can. I never say no, and because it's an honor to be asked, or to if you ask someone to come on, and you know I think it's one of the best ways of letting people know who you are, letting them know about who you are as an author, what kind of writing you do, what your books are about, what your plans are, because especially as an indie author, you're everything. You're the captain of the ship, right? And I think it's really important for people to get to know you and see if you're someone worth getting to know, and if your book could be worthwhile, again, if not for you but for someone else, right?
Mhm.
So it might be, of Chris, that, okay, well, this book could be for people, but you know what, my spouse really loves that kind of book, so, and it's a Christmas present, so I think that's big. But thank you for what you do. You do a great job. It's amazing.
Well, I love indie authors too, because the determination you must have to believe in this creation, and to take the time and energy and all the work that must go into it. It, I have so much respect for all the indie authors who do it, because must take a ton of it's a labor of love, really, like we had mentioned earlier. And it's great to see some of them getting well known, and so it's so much respect for all the things you all do. So it helps, it drives me to do better in my life too, seeing how hard you all work at getting your creations, and how determined and passionate you are about it. It's really great.
Well, right back at you, man. You inspire us very much so. And as you know, the Internet author is like Frankenstein, your little creation, like, and nobody else might think it's gonna come to life, but when it comes to life, ooh, like, so that's it is a labor of love, as you said. You said that very aptly. And as an indie author, you feel like, especially when you first start, a lot of us, you're just shouting at the void, please, notice me, buy my book, please, please, pretty please,
Yeah.
and that's the part I hate about marketing, some promotion. I can sell someone else's book. I think I'm pretty good at that, actually. I can take, somebody, I can sell all my writer friends. I could talk about their books for hours. I can hype them up and tweet them, and on Twitter and social media. I can do all that stuff really well. But when it's in my book, you feel this, you do feel kind of disingenuous, almost like, trying to plug people to plug your book and try and get people to buy it. But that's part of the game too, right? So, but it's much more about making genuine connections, I feel. And like, the writers that I admire, the ones that aren't 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always just doing promotional stuff. They have genuine content. They're engaging with people. They're supporting others. Supporting is big. The writers that a lot of writers in the writing community, they do more promotional stuff for other people than themselves, and I really admire that. And I think that's the way to go, like I said, and then people will in turn boost them. So that's what it's all about. You have to promote yourself. You have to sell your books, or else you won't be doing it anymore. But not everybody writes for sales. Don't I'm not I shouldn't say that. Like, some people write for the love of it, and sales is much more secondary, right? Which is a very healthy thing. But a lot of us in the community, we want to recoup the investment that we put into, writing an indie book is not cheap. It's thousands of dollars usually, at a minimum. And you want to recoup that investment, and you want to be able to keep writing, if nothing else, just to put the profits back into your next book.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I mean, it's if you want to be somewhat successful, whatever you define success is, and usually sales is one of those measures, one of those markers. You have to promote your book. So
Yeah, it's a grind for sure. It's a lot of work and time goes into it.
yeah.
So if people want to find you and your work, where's the best place to connect with you?
Well, I am active on social media, but predominantly of the three platforms I'm on nominally, which is Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot, so you can find me on Twitter. As you know, that's the best place to find me. I'm very active there. Excuse me. I My Twitter handle is at PL Stuart Writes, one word. So at PL Stuart Writes. It's the same on essentially the same on Instagram and Facebook. I also have a website, www.plstuart.com. That's a great place to find updates about upcoming releases in the Drowned Kingdom saga and eventually in the other series I plan to write. I have a monthly blog where hopefully the topics are somewhat interesting. I also do, as I said, I mentioned, I like to feature and draw attention to creatives. So I do interviews on my blog called Six Elemental Interviews, where I ask 6 questions, as I said, of creators in the writing community to try and let people get to know them. You can find me, of course, blogging at Before We Go blog under the wonderful Black Tabler with Steve and a lot of other great people. And yeah, I'm pretty well. I'm pretty well out there. I think if you Google PL Stuart, you know, it's usually me that comes up. So you know,
Yeah.
I'm out there.
And
So
I'll leave all those links if the on YouTube or in the podcast. Leave all the links in the description for the episode. So thank
thank
you
you.
so much for coming by. I really appreciate it, and I'm always surprised whenever someone says yes. So I was really thrilled that you were able to come by and chat with me.
Oh, there's no question. There's a lot more. There's a lot more popular people than me out there. So I'm just humbled that you thought I was worthy to come on, and hope we get to do it again. Looking forward to the 13th when we get you know, pay homage to, you know, the genius that is Zamil Akhtar and Conqueror's Blood, and I get to see Zamil again, who's fantastic, and Made Between the Pages and Laura Lullabies, who are amazing bloggers, and spend time with you too, and you know, probably have another great, very stimulating discussion, you know, with the 5 of us. So looking forward to that.
No doubt about that. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So thank you again. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, sir. All the best. We'll be seeing you soon.